The roundabout on the Castries waterfront will be very different to St. Lucian's heading to the city, as it now features a St. Lucian treasure, the all-in sculpture, to commemorate our nation's 40th independence anniversary.
We're happy to welcome to our studios here at Calabash TV. You've been here before, Jallim Eudovic. Welcome to Calabash TV.
Thank you.
I know you do quite a bit of traveling, so we're certainly good to capitalize on your moment here in St. Lucia to talk a little bit about, to bring us up to date, because we spoke with you a few years ago.
Okay.
About your work, and especially October must be a very good month for you and your family.
Fantastic month.
Yeah, because your sculpture got unveiled at the waterfront. Your father was honored as a cultural icon. So talk to us about October. What does it mean to you? At least this October 2019.
Okay, first of all, October is also the month of the birthday month of my wife.
Okay.
You know, and incidentally, her birthday was also on the 3rd.
Wow.
And that was pure coincidence, nothing to do with the unveiling date. But you know, October has been and will remain one of my most seminal months, my most happiest months from this point on, because as you said, it's the month of the unveiling of one of my most important pieces to date, which is the all-in sculpture in Castries. And it's also the month that my dad was honored by the CDF. He's celebrated as the icon for this year by CDF, Cultural Development Foundation. And you know, I mean, it just couldn't be better. I feel like all the stars are aligned.
He is one of the leading contemporary sculptors working in the Caribbean region. His work is layered with creative force, Caribbean wit, spirituality, and poetry.
We'll talk a little bit about the other things you mentioned just a while. But your father, you started with him at a very early age.
Yes.
When you were seeing him as the son working out and so on, you started at 5, I understand. Was it a case where you had a natural curiosity, a natural interest in what I was doing, or he said, "Come, help me carry this, put this," and then you got involved?
But I think it was a natural interest, you know, because as far back as my memory allows, I always wanted to be a creator. I remember some of my earliest memories was sitting in Miss Survey's preschool. That's a preschool, is obviously the Anglican school, and very close to the road. So you know, I'd always be interested in the vehicles and the passers-by and so on. You know, and I think that probably had a profound impact on me. That I wanted to capture that. You know, but also. What inspired me very early on is the stick drawings, the stick figure drawings of my classmates. You know, I always wanted to emulate that and improve on that. You know, I remember being very jealous of some stick figures. You know, so I think that was my entry into the art world, and I think it was probably in my DNA. I mean, you know, obviously, I think so. But I didn't realize that my dad was this icon, this iconic figure in St. Lucia, this amazing sculptor. And by the time I got to figure it out, I was about 5-6 years old. And at that time, he invited me to his workshop. Well, it was less of an invitation. It was more of a sort of mandatory thing, you know, that you have to put in your hours in the workshop. But I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And I sat next to his much older apprentices because he trained hundreds of young people across the island.
Right.
Not only in St. Lucia, but in Trinidad and Tobago. He even did some things in Barbados, just all around the world. Welcome to our small gallery where we have on display most of my father's work and that of his apprentices or artists, I would say, because we have some in-house artists who work here permanently at Eudovic Art Studio, trained by my dad. And what we do both high-end and low-end work. We're high, middle, and low. So you have more of the high-end stuff here. This is typically my father's style that he developed in the 60s, mastered in the 70s, and has been international from that point in time. You know, and this is a piece called Marriage, but his work is made from red cedar stump. And this is another piece here called Relax. You know, and all around you is his signature work. These free-flowing forms are the signature work of my father. And like one of the plaques you will see on the wall are that of his apprentices and so on. You know, he's our artist here at Eudovic Art Studio. These are some of my favorite pieces, like this piece here.
Why is it your favorite?
Well, just the energy in the piece. It's a very energetic, very dynamic piece, and it moves. It feels kinetic, and so it's the spirit of my dad really encapsulated in this piece. And the studio has been sort of an epicenter of the arts in the Caribbean and in the world, because it has acted as a residence for regional and international artists as well. So just growing up in the studio to me was extremely rich. We have the likes of Sir Derek Walcott coming by, Sir Dunstan, Leroy Clark from Trinidad and Tobago. I mean, just a amount of stalwarts. Everybody will come to the studio. Everybody who was somebody. And then we had the restaurant that brought in more people, and just the ingenious way that my father capitalized on the success of the restaurant in his early days and married it with the art studio. It almost forced people to interact with the artwork, and that had a very profound impact on me. That marriage between business and art, and I think that's the approach that I have taken up in my whole life, because a lot of people think that these two entities are separate, and I always tell people that what an artist does, you take a raw product, and when you're done imparting your soul on that product, you have a refined product. In a way there is business in that. I know art is not business at its core, but there is a technical hardcore business process or approach that you should have to it in order for it to be successful. So I was looking at ways in my career of to market my work, in viable ways.
So your work is sustained tremendously by tourism?
Yes, definitely. 99%, maybe 98, 99% is tourism. I'm talking about Eudovic Art Studio. The work that we do here is mainly sustained by the tourism market. I think the cruise ship industry is key. Also the hotel industry, but the cruise ship industry, sort of the cornerstone of the of our neck of the creative industry. People come in here by the hundreds every day when there's a cruise ship in port, and we add value to the total experience that the island has to offer. The tourism product, we have to diversify it, because it's not just about sun, sea and sand. We have our culture on display here. That's a wood called laureate, which is a local wood.
Is it the best wood to work with?
Well, I like to do my it's a semi-soft wood, I would say. So for my markets and smaller pieces, I like working with it because it carves easily.
All right. So, at what point did you start to create your own work? You're working in the workshop with your dad, but at what point did you realize, oh, I can do this as well? I have a special skill as well.
Well, the environment that we were brought up in was very competitive. First to begin with, because you're not special in that environment. you are one of many, and you have to earn your stake. You have to earn your reputation. And my father never wore the kids' gloves, and that's very important to note. He didn't have time for that. He was an international sculptor, doing big things all the time. And if you wanted his attention, you had to be excellent, and that was just the bottom line. So so we were always in this competitive mode. It wasn't fiercely competitive, like where you want to poke each other's eyes out, but but it was all about progress. It was all about doing better than the last time. So so that's the environment that I grew up in. Now, if you're an artist, how are you competitive? You become competitive by being innovative. So innovation is key to getting ahead. So my siblings and I always try to top one another, and also we were looking to beat my dad's best apprentice, you know. You know, so we moved from contemporary art to traditional art. We did everything. I think this one is like a bird and a lady. It's somewhere in there, or birds, many birds, and there's a female form there as well. So this type of art is all about you know, the mind's eye. You know what you see? But in my professional career, when I left St. Mary's College, you know, I had the option to go to university, to go to the mall and so on. But you know, I decided to stay with the family business, and it's a decision that I've never regretted, because I immediately started to travel the world. You know, because of my advanced level, the advanced stage that I was at. Took part in MSc Fine Arts a few times and won the highest prizes and so on, and that put me on the radar, and I immediately began to travel very far afield. Traveled to places like Canada, Martinique, many times, Africa, England, New York. You know, I mean, there's never a year that passes by if I don't do something in the international, you know, arena. And what has brought me there was my eagerness to do something different. You know, I didn't want to parrot my dad for too long, because obviously I was trained in his style. He's a contemporary artist with a signature style of work, and I learned that from a tender age, and I really wanted to break through and break out of that, you know, because at some point you have to get out of your father and your mother's shadow. You know. And so that's what I did. But what played a key role in that was my sojourn to Africa, Niger, Africa. And it's a story that I have given a couple of times, but it's a story worth telling, you know. I went to Africa with the preconception that, you know, it's a very impoverished place and so on. And it was, I mean, you know, Niger being the most impoverished country in Africa. But what I expected to find there was not what I found. I thought I would have found pure destitution, and you know, an absolute you know, poverty that sort of you know, made the people despondent. What I found there was pure love and pure creativity. You know, I discovered that you know, that the excuses that we've been you know, giving ourselves in this part of the world are our lies. You know, we tell ourselves things like, you know, poverty begets crime, and so on, and we tell ourselves that, you know, we cannot do because we don't have the exact resources that we need. And what I saw in Africa was people creating out of nothing, people creating out of cardboard, people creating out of junk. They were, you know, using everyday average things that people will throw away to create masterpieces, and I saw the vital role that played in that particular society. You know, and I was extremely humbled by that experience. And when I came back to St. Lucia, I was transformed, and I realized that, you know, I had found my voice, I found my purpose. I knew what I wanted to do as an artist. I knew that I wanted to communicate globally. I wanted to be profound in my contribution to the international conversation, because I always say art is a conversation. And you know, so I started to look at various issues, social issues that existed in my country, and how that could speak globally. And so my style had to fit that, you know, because really and truly, your style is a narrative. You know, it's a language. Your artwork is just a vessel to carry that message across the waters and so on. So I would say that was one of my most seminal moments, and I was transformed. I'm still transformed, and I'm still carrying on in this philosophical route.
So talk to us the joy of what you're doing there. When you carving and so on, what exactly is the joy you get from this, the satisfaction?
Well, I'm in another place when I'm doing the work. When I'm sculpting, I'm in another place. I'm teleported to somewhere that's not Earth, you know. Somewhere that's the stars in another realm, you know, and that's the joy of it, you know. All your worries and and your inhibitions and your trepidation, your concerns, whatever keeps you back and not healthy for you disappears when you're doing art. Because you have to be, because you cannot do art in a spirit of chaos, you know.
So how did you make your work different to what your dad was doing? Because like you said, you had been heavily influenced by him, so that was inborn, that was innate. But in terms of you deciding consciously, I need to be different, I need to be my own person. So what is it that distinguishes your style and approach to your father's?
Well, my father's style, well, it's important to note that my father's style has evolved. You know, I mean, all artists are always evolving and so on. You know, but I guess because we do have that same philosophical standing, we you know, because you have to have that as an artist. You have to be steeped in a certain philosophy. And his is of the community, of the people, and certainly mine is that too. But I believe I started to elongate my figures more, and I became slightly more literal than he was. But I'm also now finding myself going a more contemporary route, you know. So I also do a lot of contemporary, very minimal kind of works, you know, very minimalistic sculptures that have done well in the Western world. You know, but I can't get away from my figurative stuff, you know, because you know, it's like, you know, poetry. You know, the difference between poetry and a novel. You know, for instance, the you know, the poetic word is more abstract. The novel word is more literal. So you know, so we use those tools. You know, these tools are necessary to use to communicate to different audiences.
Have you also dabbled in literary works as well? Because I know you were interested earlier on.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, I see that I find there's a very thin line between one form of art and the other, you know. And I always say that, you know, that what differentiates a writer from a sculptor, and a sculptor from a painter, and a painter from a musician is nothing much, you know. It's just the instrument, you know. So you know, I've always loved literature. I have the passion for literature. You know, Derek Walcott is my probably one of my biggest heroes. You know, I absolutely love Bob Marley. You know, so I mean, I love theater. At some point, I did dabble in theater, and I even dreamed about becoming an actor. I dabble in architecture, you know, and I do a little bit of design, even today. So you know, even fashion, I love the fashion world. I love it all. I love anything that is of creativity.
This is the reality show on Calabash TV. You are watching the reality show streaming live on stluciafirst.com.
We know you travel quite a bit, and you mentioned every year you're out doing something. And we know you've been spending some time in China, and you'll be heading there again. Talk to us about the China connection, and what did it do for you as an artist to see there's a demand for your work in China, and you're being commissioned by the Chinese government to produce work for them?
Yeah, well, what China did for me was put me on an international stage, you know, because I got the opportunity to do work for various cities and to literally conceptualize for them around the ethos of the society, you know. And when such a big, huge behemoth society gives you that opportunity and puts that very important responsibility in your hand, then that does wonders for your self-esteem as well, you know. So you know, and what China also did for me was to give me the confidence of just having the audacity to think big and to be epic in my thinking. And you know, to me, you know, that's one thing, you know, artists have to be. You have to be epic, because we are operating in a sort of dream space, you know. And after China got me to that platform, put me on that level, like the world came calling, really, because it was important in me establishing my viability and my validity as an artist, you know. So that's what China did for me. Yeah. So
give us an idea of some of the pieces that you have there currently. Just which one is your favorite, and why, and what is the story you were telling? Because obviously it's a different culture, so you have to be telling a probably different story.
Yes. What I've come to realize is that, like the song says, people are the same wherever you go. There are lots of similarities between all cultures, and the more I travel the world, is the more I see that, there are some parts in China that remind me of Chauzel, like remind me of Denry. Imagine that. It's just different people, different skin tone, but it's really and truly same people. Right. And so there's a parallel that runs from, there's a common thread that runs from our society to all societies. So so you just have to make, so what I did was I made my work, relevant, intellectually and spiritually relevant to these societies as well, and I guess they found it, refreshing, because they have not seen that perspective of an old idea before, because that's all we are playing with. We are playing with new ways to revamp old ideas, really and truly in the visual context, in the visual world. That's what it is. So my first piece I did in 2008, it was for a family park. That's what they call it, but it's the world's largest sculpture park in a place called Changchun, China, and it was all about the family. So I did a piece called Nurture, and what Nurture portrayed was the eternal role of a mother, from the womb to giving birth to basically raising a child, and that forced me to be multi-dimensional, because when you want to cram all these things into a piece of work which is made out of material that is not kinetic, it doesn't move, then you have to find ways to utilize abstraction to express all these sentiments, So that really gave me an opportunity to step my game up and to be a lot more powerful than I was, before that point in time. And ever since, I have been doing work for cities all around China, because once you in the circle, then you get recommended, word of mouth, and so on. But it's important to know that it has always been a competitive process. There is no free meal, at that level. You always have to keep on proving yourself, and especially in China, because you have millions of artists that want to stab at that same pie. So so you really have to always be on your best game. Put your best foot forward at all times. So so my steel has been very sharpened by these experiences in China.
And you still have your Chinese connection, because you're traveling there pretty soon as
yes,
well.
Yes. I travel there pretty soon. I work there. I find myself there almost every year now. And I'm looking forward to do bigger and better projects in China. It's a very exciting place to be.
Yeah. So I want to talk two things. I mean, in terms of the works, is basically bronze work that you have there?
Bronze work.
Bronze work.
Because it's all public art. Oh, I have, and I've also now created, a couple of years ago, was it last year? I did my first marble sculpture, which is about 10 feet tall. This one is a very contemporary piece.
What is it?
It's called Circle of Life. So it speaks to...
it's in China?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
It speaks to the environmental degradation that is happening in China, but also in the world. And to me, I feel very happy about this piece, because because China has begun to change their behavior as it pertains to reducing the carbon footprint. And this sculpture was sort of like an emblem, or a huge symbol towards that effort. So I think they're using it in that regard.
And so when you're there and you reflect, because you're obviously dealing with Chinese government people who commissioned you to do the work for them, and you're saying, okay, in St. Lucia, because you just got your first public sculpture here in St. Lucia. And I know you made a comment about the Circle of Life, is it called, about the environment in China. So you're obviously making a statement.
Yes.
What are your thoughts when you think, well, hold on, my country should be doing a lot more, that we don't have a sculpture park in St. Lucia? And we're not just talking about any government, but across the board we don't have one. So what is your thought on how artists like yourself are regarded nationally in St. Lucia?
Well, to me that's a very tricky kind of question, because it's something that I pondered on a lot, and I found myself being a lot forgiving to ourselves, I wouldn't say government because it's true government too, but but I say ourselves because government come from us. We are the government. We elect the government, and the government reflect us generally. So I would say that I think it's an evolutionary thing. It's an evolutionary thing. We are 40 years old. That's not too young, but that's not too old either. And I believe that we have come a long way, but we have a longer way to go. And the minds of the people are incrementally being developed, but the minds of the people also needs to be cultivated, and the journey of the development needs to be a perpetual one. It needs to be an unceasing one. And a good way to do that is by putting arts in the forefront. Because it's very important for our society to have a soul, and for our society to be developed along intellectual axis. We really have to do that, because all societies in the world that people brag and boast about, they develop their people for art and culture. It's the easiest way to develop a mind. Is because show me a man, like a man is what he thinketh. And if you're not a critical thinker, if you can think beyond the veneer of who you are, beyond your daily routine, the survival things that you have to do, if you can think that way, if you can imbibe things that are intellectual, if you can't think beneath the surface, then the outcome is not going to be that great. So I believe that now is the time. The time is opportune now for us to build on what our stalwarts have left behind, on foundation of our stalwarts like Derek Walcott, like Sir Arthur Lewis, like people like my father, like Dunstan St. Omer. We have to continue to build, and at some point, we will reap the benefits. We'll reap the benefits. We'll see it, and we're not looking at creating artists, only artists. We're looking at creating people who are critical thinkers, and when you do that, then that will redound to the entire benefit of your society. You'll see people being more responsive to the environment, people being more loving and caring to each other, and more generally better citizens. You'll have less crime, because someone who appreciates life, and appreciates beauty, is not someone that is really given to taking that away, in a indiscriminate manner. It's not someone that is given to doing appalling things.
You mentioned the stalwarts a while ago, and Dunstan, St. Omer, Derek Walcott, and so on. And the question I was asking in terms of, in St. Lucia, for example, we've produced a Nobel Prize winner like Sir Derek, and we don't have a theatre to reflect that we have a Nobel laureate in that area. We have Sir Dunstan, we have your father, who are in the arts doing exceptional work, and we don't have an institution to say, like a School of Art institution that is of that a standard that reflects those persons. We have a Levin Spencer who's into high jump, but we don't have a first world-class high jump facilities that to reflect her legacy and so on.
Exactly.
So yeah, these were the things. As you were speaking, I was thinking of that. We, as a country that's 40 years old, need to start thinking that we need to be building. That's how you build legacy as well.
Definitely.
Because your father did exceptionally well in training the next generation.
Definitely.
Now, in terms of still go back to your father, and currently now, when you look at the landscape in St. Lucia in terms of sculpturing and so on, do you sense that there's a lot more young people getting involved, or now because of new media that people are focusing on other things?
Definitely, and and I've said it already that St. Lucia, in my view, is the most talented country in the world per capita. But it's all beneath the carpet. We have to find ways to bring that to surface. And not having a museum in this day and age is not an excuse anymore. We have to have these structures. We need museums, because that's your repository of your entire history. That's where you should put it. And we need more opportunities for the youngsters to display the work and to express themselves. So we need theaters, we need proper theaters, we need a theater, we need museums, and we need the schools curriculum to reflect that, to reflect an agenda that develops the people around who they are, around the history, around the creativity, and all those wonderful things. We in this day and age, we cannot say that we will not. We have to. It's just essential in the sustainability of our culture, how far we've come. We thank God for the Denry segment, and music that is emanating from the country now. I wouldn't say just rural areas, but the entire country has caught on, because I believe it has revitalized the Creole language, in a profound way, and so so I believe, but I believe we must not leave it to chance. It has to be a bit more systemic and systematical than it has been. We can't leave the Darren Sammys of the future or the Lovan Spencers to chance. We have to have the structures to develop our youth, and churn them out, and export them to the world.
I'm happy mentioning that, because you mentioned Darren Sammy. We have Darren Sammy, and we appreciate greatly what Darren Sammy has done for St. Lucia and the motivation that he is to St. Lucian cricketers and young persons. But we have the facility, the Darren Sammy facility, but we don't have strong government-supported grassroots programs. Most of these grassroots programs struggle to develop the next generation of Darren Sammys. And you mentioned the Denry segment as well, in terms of these guys are breaking out and creating opening and for other musicians in St. Lucia. But if you look at music in schools, we have a school of music that's underfunded, that needs help. We don't have music programs across St. Lucia, so I understand the connection you're making, that you need to focus on developing the next generation.
Definitely.
Talk to us about, in terms of your own interaction with young persons. I noticed on your page there's a Earl Claude Joseph that's being featured, but talk to us about you seeing the next generation of sculptors on the horizon.
Definitely. And my dream is to have a training facility one day, and to follow my father's footsteps of preparing the next generation for the industry, because we have a huge industry. We have the tourism industry that where we literally have clientele coming down here, people of great affluence. They're sitting right in our hotels on a daily basis, and so that is opportunity right there, and that's what I survive on mainly. That's what my family survives on, and lots of other solutions. But we need to train our people, and so I believe that we are replete with talent. Like I said, we are bursting at the seams with talent, but it needs to be trained and it needs to be informed. Chozel is the craft maker of St. Lucia, and that is Chozel is now dying a slow death, because you find that the young people there are not taking up the mantle of what the parents used to do. So the last set of potters are right now whittling away, and the kids are not getting into it because it's hard work. It's hard work for little pay. But I have seen ways in which it could be developed, and where people could get real value for the work. So it has to be a broader discussion. But I have set up a company now. It's a art and craft company called Papa Bois that will be coming on stream very shortly. That will seek to develop a lot of these products in these communities and hopefully rescue it. But I will need a lot of assistance from government. I'm not talking about just financial assistance, but by ways of policy, making and so on. Like for example, the importation of tools and the importation of material that we will need to do our work. We have to look beyond. At some point, the unclean Chozel is going to run out. So what do? We may have to import clay from somewhere else. So it needs to be a broader discussion. but I believe that we're sitting on a treasure trove, you know, but we mustn't take it for granted. If we don't develop it now, then our luck is going to run out. You know, at some point, you know, we're not going to have this stalwarts around to even pass on the knowledge. So now is the time.
This is Our Reality, Calabash TV. You are watching the reality show streaming live on stluciafirst.com.
This momentous occasion forms part of the year-long celebration of St. Lucia's 40th year of independence under the theme All In, Our Journey, Our Future.
So we want to get to 2019 and October 3rd, when the unveiling of All In. That's the name that was given for the project, but when you were working on it, do you have a concept name for it, a work in progress kind of title for it?
Yeah, well, you know, original name, well, names always evolve in my work, you know, because the meaning of the work is ever evolving. The more it interacts with people and it gets out there, you know, it takes on a different meaning each and every time. So the first name was Le Péché. Le Péché was part of my Kudna exhibition. Then I called it the Boat of Dreams. Then finally it became All In, because, you know, I like the name All In. You know, All In is short, it's sweet, it rolls off the tongue nicely, and it really depicts the true spirit of the sculpture, I believe. You know? Yeah.
So give us a little bit of the background in terms of when you're doing it, the thoughts, and what is the messages that you wanted persons viewing it to get from your work.
Okay, well, you know, there's been huge debate around the sculpture that I absolutely love. You know, people have been calling me with the commiserations, telling me, you know, people out there is talking a lot of junk. I'm like, no, there's no junk conversation around art. I find it's a very refreshing conversation that we needed to have.
As we celebrate 40 years of change, development, progress, we invite all St. Lucians to be all in. This is our journey, our future.
All in, it's our journey.
It reflects our 4 ethnic groups, right? You know, you have the Africans who were brought here by the Caucasians, who met the Amerindians here, and who later on brought the East Indians as indentured, you know, laborers. You know, but what I found that, and what history tells us, is that these ethnic groups did not work together, you know, too well. You know, everybody kept to themselves and they work in silos. But time has unified us, and we become a truly Creole society, or cosmopolitan society. You know, I can't find a place in the world that is more intercultural than St. Lucia. I've said a few times that, you know, that multiculturalism is what obtains in places like America and so on. But, you know, when you're intercultural, that means you have intermingling of people, of cultures and so on, you know, and that makes for even richer society. So that's one aspect of the sculpture, right? But what is key in all these people's coming to St. Lucia is that they all came here by boat. So I wanted to use the oars as symbols of transcendence, you know, because, you know, the journey that we are on now is sort of a spiritual journey, and we have to transcend above, you know, the things of the past that kept us apart from each other. So the oars is sort of like a metaphor, right? And if you realize the pieces are interconnected, sort of like, you know, gears or parts of a machine working together, and it shows that, you know, we have to support each other. Each of the rows are supported by each other, and if you realize the row in front, there is space for another to be connected to that almost infinite puzzle, you know, and that could create a bridge from St. Lucia to the rest of the world, if you had to think about it that way. And there is no boat as well, because to me the boat wasn't necessary.
So that was deliberate.
Yeah, that was very deliberate, because, you know, because where we're heading now, you know, we don't need a vessel. we need soundness of mind, mental fortitude, and spiritual soundness. You know, that's what will it will get us across these turbulent waters, and what has been getting us, across. When we come together, we become the vessel. So and you also need, when you're doing contemporary art, when you're doing art of that nature, whether the art that I love to do, I love to tilt. I love to create a space where the, one imagination can go, and you allow the public to partake in the sculpture and to fill in the voids.
But you must have known that once you didn't put in the canoe there, people were going to ask, where's the boat?
Yes.
So you anticipated
and it's
that kind of reaction.
Yes, because I wanted people to ask those questions. Where's the boat? And
why there's no boat?
And why there is no boat, which gives the sculpture deeper meaning and allows the sculpture to expand in the minds and the hearts and souls of people, and is very important to not to be literal all the time, not to be literal, so it has made the sculpture a lot more poetic. It has made it a metaphor. It's not just about the boat, and if the boat was there, the boat would have been a huge distraction. And if you put a boat, then somebody will tell you, but what's about the fish? Then somebody else will tell you, what's about the coral reef, So, so it's a minimal sculpture, and it was intentionally done to provoke, your conversation, and also to give deeper meaning. And guess what? If I put the boat, then you wouldn't have seen the connectivity of the rowers, So to me, that was even more important than a boat.
Excellent. Now, in terms of just the direction, where it's facing and so on, was that part of the thinking as what direction you want the boat to be heading? Yeah.
Definitely. I wanted to create that connection between the water and the land, and give the impression that the rowers are rowing out towards sea. Some people say it looks like they are coming back towards the land, but I think these two thoughts work well together. Because when you go out, you have to come back. You come back, you have to go back out. So it all works for the strength of the sculpture, really.
So as we look at this one, which is bronze, did your father ever dabble in bronze at all?
No, but I think he had dreams of dabbling in bronze, and
So he's living that through you in a sense as well.
In a sense, yeah.
Now, we were saying earlier on in terms of that's your first major public piece in St. Lucia, and you're heading out to do some more pieces in China and other places as well. And I know you have a plan to develop your own, facility to train and to encourage and inspire people. Are there plans for you to do more of those public sculptures for St. Lucia, or is it?
No, I will love to. I'll never turn down an opportunity in my country, never, because I believe that the more we have, is the better. I believe that we should have more players come on board too, so I hope that this sculpture will be a source of inspiration to artists out there to dream of putting the work in the public space, because to me that's the greatest thing, that's the greatest contribution you can make, and it's one to your society and to developing the psyche of your fellow man, because as you know, it's just not all about aesthetics. We have a role and a responsibility as artists to develop and to incite and to excite as well. So definitely I will not turn down another opportunity like this at all.
And of course, your father's studio is still very active at Goodlands, so you want to encourage celebrations to go there because they now introduced your work at the waterfront, but they can go there and get to see, and especially because your father was just honored as a cultural icon, that they can go there to see some of his work and your work as well in there.
Yeah, well, I haven't worked actively for the studio for a number of years. That's because of my international exploits. But I do maintain a strong presence at the studio. I still work out of. That's where I work out of, and but I like to encourage the public, as you said, to come by, because we open our doors to schools, children of all ages, all the time. In fact, I met somebody some time ago who was about 55 years old, and she was telling me how she came to the studio when she was a little girl. I'm like, what? 55 and she came there as a little girl? And then I realized how long the studio has been there for.
Right, yeah.
Been there for a very long time. And, it's a rich experience. So I like to encourage the public to come. You know, you can walk in, don't feel intimidated to come to Eudovic Art Studio. And not only our art studio, there are many artists who have cottage industries all across the island and in little spaces of creativity. Find out who your artists are. Go, bring your children, bring your family when you have a little time. It's important.
Yeah, Jallim, we certainly appreciate you giving us the time here to connect for a while. We hadn't spoken for a while, but also to talk about your the project that you have at the waterfront, All In, and your work as you continue to represent St. Lucia internationally as well. So we'd like to wish you all the best for that. Any final thoughts from you before we close?
Well, you know, I always like to leave a note for young artists, you know, out there, young and old artists, you know, to tell them that, you know, to never be intimidated by what you may think the public reaction or people's reaction is to your work. You know, follow your heart and put your best foot forward at all times, and don't be afraid to do new things and to explore new areas. You know, because for all you know, you might be changing the world. You know, so you know, and the world is your oyster. And you know that is not an understatement at all. You know, so you know, don't only look at St. Lucia. You know, let's look at the world, because we are citizens of the world. If you look at our ethnic, you know, makeup, what makes us up as a people is everybody of the world. You know, we are European, we are African, we are Indian, East Indian, we are Amerindian. You know, so you have a right to dream big, and you have a right to go out there and to get what is yours, you know, with hard work, of course.
All right, thank you so much. We've been speaking with Jallim Eudovic, the son of the iconic, legendary Vincent Joseph Eudovic, who was honored by St. Lucia as a cultural icon in 2019. We'd like to thank you so much for giving us the time, Jallim, and wish you all the best as you continue to represent St. Lucia globally. So thanks so much.
Thank you very much. Pleasure being here.
This is The Reality Show.